9 former heads of the CDC slammed Trump's Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in a blistering New York Times op-ed, accusing him of, quote, endangering every American's health.
Everything that said is bullshit.
This is my default position. If it's a 3-letter agency, if it's an institution that I've been told to trust, I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna until you prove it to me. That doesn't mean I'll believe all clickbait out there. But for me, it's, hey, you need to make the case to me. Because we have seen, and we'll get to the CDC now, time and time again, the experts are wrong about everything. About everything. And that's why the media is going nuts right now. The media is saying, oh, can you believe it? These people are resigning at the CDC. Well, yes, I can, when you understand that it is an ideological strong arm of the Democrat Party that was in power in government. This is a good thing that the CDC is seeing some monumental changes.
CDC is bailing 'cause Kennedy
Obesity.
Jr.'s taking obesity and vaccines seriously. Having a little CDC.
Now, I'll just, spoiler alert, the director of the CDC, I believe it was the director, listed pronouns in the resignation letter. That tells you everything you need to know, right? In protest, and a reason why, my pronouns. Oh, you're anti-science. You don't believe that man and woman is a thing, which is anti-science. Why would I trust you on vaccination schedules or mandates? So according to the media, though, let's hear it from their own mouths. The CDC is in shambles. And you are guaranteed going to get monkeypox and your golden retriever will develop a latex allergy. No connection there because of big, bad, not pharma, RFK Jr.
9 former heads of the CDC slammed Trump's Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in a blistering New York Times op-ed, accusing him of, quote, endangering every American's health.
There is a new rebuke today of Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s leadership of the agency.
As Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy continues to face backlash for the upheaval at the CDC.
It is not remarkable what's happening at the CDC. We all knew it.
Not just the firing of the CDC director, but also the departure of 3 top leaders in CDC is, again, an erosion in the expert core of our nation's health defenses.
Everything that said is bullshit.
I'm glad these leaders who are leaving the CDC have the financial safety net that they have to be able to quit their job.
Exactly.
Good on them.
So let's look at why they might be leaving. Hey, you would think, right, if ever we see the disaster movies, they're leaving because, well, all of a sudden, now they can't in clear conscience support a new administration that is corrupt and wants to turn them into ideologues as opposed to scientists, right? Well, except it's the exact opposite. You can check the references because I'll make my case here. Here's the first claim that they're making. No one can trust the CDC anymore, not because of what you lived through with COVID, but RFK Jr.
But right now, I agree with Dr. Frieden. I think that we can no longer trust the CDC. We certainly can no longer trust the Advisory Committee for Immunization Practices because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has stocked that committee with people who really aren't experts in the field, don't have expertise, and aren't going to be giving us very good advice. Here's the truth.
The CDC is not only why we don't trust the CDC, it's the reason for RFK Jr. Let me ask you this. What other time can you remember in history where a medical advisory panel, whatever you want to call the organization, what it's supposed to do, the CDC, when American people, the American public, there was such an outcry for reformation, for a complete erosion of trust, that an outsider who's not a doctor was brought in and is more trusted than the organization that was tasked with leading us through the pandemic. RFK Jr. is a response. He exists because you have rightfully lost the trust of the American people. If you just, like I've said, selectively editing history, if you just start with the end point, RFK Jr., people lost trust in the CDC. Hold on a second. Is RFK Jr. a departure from everything we have seen as the norm at the CDC? And why would he have had the kind of support that he did? because you screwed it up, CDC. Let's just give you some examples. We all know that we lived through this. Remember, they blamed all of the deaths on COVID when they locked you down. 94% of the COVID-related deaths had some other comorbidity listed, right? We covered this. There was someone who shot themselves in the head.
There were at least 5 gunshot wounds in Tacoma that were ruled as COVID deaths.
They were ruled as COVID deaths.
Yeah. Wasn't there like a motorcycle accident in Michigan?
Motorcycle accident that was listed as a COVID death. And this was the justification for, again, more anti-science, locking all of you down and keeping kids from schools. And now they're wondering why we have a mental health epidemic where people in their formative years weren't allowed to interact with other human beings. Again, predicated on a lie of this angel of death that was sweeping across the country. Here's another example. Remember, they pushed the COVID vax, the mRNA vaccine, completely untested, right? And then we saw the complications, which of course they tried to suppress and said, no, it doesn't exist. But even in Europe, they said, well, because of the risks, we're not going to recommend young people getting the mRNA vaccine. The myocarditis risk, we saw it, right? We saw all kinds of athletes fainting, all kinds of complications. People aged largely male, 2 to 17, right? The excess deaths after that jumped 85% in 3 years. The VAERS system, which was the system that was used, by the way, to look at vaccine complications in the past, 171,000 Americans reported adverse effects. And then they said, yeah, but you can't trust VAERS. Remember when they made up completely arbitrary? Remember there was a period
too now. They've admitted it. We were just guessing.
Yeah, don't you remember? Hey, 6 feet rule. Yeah. Remember we all lived by that. You had people with masks. You had people walking around with measuring tapes when you were going into a trinket shop. And you ask yourself, well, where did that come from? Well, it came from, obviously, CDC. FDA probably had a hand in it, right? So you assumed at that point in time, even if you disagreed with it, I get that some of you thought, well, maybe there is truth to this, but they still don't have the right to tell us how we can live our lives. Well, it turns out there was no truth to it at all. It was just made up, as the former FDA commissioner told CBS.
The 6 feet is a perfect example of sort of the lack of rigor around how CDC made recommendations. Nobody knows where it came from. Most people assume that the 6 feet of distance, the recommendation for keeping 6 feet apart, comes out of some old studies related to flu, where droplets don't travel more than 6 feet. We now know COVID spreads through aerosols. The initial recommendation that the CDC brought to the White House, and I talk about this, was 10 feet. And a political appointee in the White House said, we can't recommend 10 feet. Nobody can measure 10 feet. It's inoperable. Society will shut down. So the compromise was around 6 feet.
A compromise or pulling a number out of thin air.
So let me get this straight. So not only did you just make it up, the number 6 feet, you didn't think it was going to be effective anyway?
Yeah.
You thought, hey, we really need 10 feet, but we'll settle on 6? I didn't think you negotiated on kind of stuff like that. I thought you were just like, well, it is 10 feet. You can do whatever you want, but it's 10 feet.
Right.
They said nobody could measure 10 feet? Yeah, I'm sure some people can measure 10 feet. Just ask a WNBA player, hey, what's the distance at which you cannot dunk?
Yes,
and they would say 10 feet.
10 feet. Yeah,
that's out of my reach.
Yeah. Exactly. You just have a measuring tape. You go jump as high as you can. That's less than 10 feet, so add 1.5 feet.
You're good.
And, you know what else they did, too? Well, they implemented this policy that was anti-scientific in a lot of ways and negatively affected your life forevermore. Some people's lives will never get back on track. People had businesses that shut down. CDC colluded with big tech to censor dissent. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
On COVID policy, we saw that with the Twitter files after Elon purchased it. We got banned from YouTube for quoting the CDC, to be clear.
My bad.
We were banned for weeks from YouTube. They made sure that doctors were banned from Facebook. Remember doctors at that point who were using ivermectin, who were using antiviral treatments? Again, at that point in time, there wasn't even, I believe, an mRNA vaccine. But they were saying that this can be managed. These were doctors with actual patients, unlike Fauci. They were removed. You guys remember that during COVID? If you had an opinion that they deemed wrongthink, you were removed. And that wasn't just Jack Dorsey at Twitter. It wasn't just Zuckerberg. It wasn't just Susan Wojcicki at YouTube. It was the CDC telling them, hey, you got to play ball and get rid of the opinions that we don't like.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why people don't trust the CDC or blame the problem on the reaction, which is RFK Jr. Here's the next claim that they make. The experts. Well, the best and the brightest right now, this is a problem because the best and the brightest are now leaving the CDC.
For the first time in a long time, I don't go to the CDC.gov website all by itself. I'm going to AAP.org. I am trying to crowdsource scientific resources not from the place that I should trust the most with people. It's not just Dr. Dimitri. There's so many career scientists and people who are so sad and have either left or are probably going to leave, and who's coming to take their places.
So she means that now she's applying the scientific rigor that she should have always applied.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just check today's references, by the way. If you're new here and you haven't, check the links in the description. Every time we make some kind of a scientific reference, it involves multiple sources, or it's a meta-analysis where you take into account all of the data and the sources. She just told you before this, I trusted what the CDC told me, like 6 feet, like 2-week lockdown to flatten the curve, like teachers shouldn't be back for 2 years, like banning voices of dissent. But now, my God, I actually have to do my own research. And here's the truth. The best and the brightest aren't leaving the CDC. Ideologues are leaving the CDC. I would take it one step further. Anti-scientists. And I mean that. So I said deputy director. I guess this was the deputy.
Yeah, he's the director of NCIRD, which is the immunization.
Okay. So he's the director of that.
Yeah.
So she was just talking about him in there, Dr. Dimitri. So this is the best and the brightest who are leaving. Now, the resignation letter, which was released publicly, to be clear, included he, his, him pronouns, the words pregnant people, the buzzwords authoritarianism and fascism. But let me show you how this is anti-science, okay? First off, to be really clear, anyone who says that they believe modern gender theory is anti-science. It is an anti-scientific worldview. Because anytime you're directed to research, going, well, wait a second, it's predicated on the idea that a man can be born in the wrong body, which presupposes there's a male brain and a female brain. Every single time they have conducted a rigorous study, it turns out, and we do know that male brains and female brains are different, turns out that the biological male who thinks he's a woman has a biological male brain. Same for biological females. The changes that take place in the brain when they used to try and make this had only taken place after cross-sex hormone replacement therapy. Maybe that's why you get 98% of kids who grow out of it if you do nothing versus 0 once you administer hormones. There is no scientific basis whatsoever for someone being born into the wrong body with a different brain. None. It's not a thing. Anyone who believes it is an anti-scientist, because it's also a foundational worldview for the left. Let me read you part of this resignation letter. For decades, I have been a trusted voice for the LGBTQ community when it comes to critical health topics. I must also cite the recklessness of this administration in their efforts to erase transgender populations. What? When you think of scientists in the films, right, it's always someone who's just dealing with data and some mayor or corporation like, I'm not going to clear out these beaches on the 4th of July, right, whatever it is, or a volcano erupting. Our town needs this. We don't care about your tremors, whatever it is. You think that someone who just, like, they're autistic, they're a Spock who just looks at numbers, right? You don't think of someone who's going, well, most important is making sure that LGBTQAIP are happy with what I'm doing here. I need to ensure that the results are in line with what they want. Erase transgender populations? Can anyone name me that? What policy from Donald Trump wants to erase transgender populations? I feel like we're getting off the beam and using that term genocide like Greta in here, erase. Mm-hmm. Also, goes on to say, cease critical domestic and international HIV programming and terminate key research to support equity as part of my decision. Hey, you're supposed to work with the CDC, right? The hell does equity have to do with your job? What does that have to do with your job to give us an accurate snapshot of the science? Sounds to me like this is a social agenda, social engineering wish list. By the way, this person was appointed by Biden as the monkeypox response deputy coordinator, to be clear. He was also, by the way, should be under the chief spreader. I'm sorry, it says cheek spreader.
Oh. No, he's both.
Monkeypox. And also, he's a literal Satanist. Just to be clear, he is a literal Satanist. Now, I don't mean he's sacrificing children. He could be an atheist and he's wearing the pentagram in order to upset Christians. Okay, well, mission accomplished. You don't have that job anymore. By the way, that is Satanism. That is Satanism, is making yourself God. A lot of Satanists are atheists, just to be clear. For those of you who don't know, if you go back to LaVey, It was, well, if we're going to use this as a parable, if we're going to use this as a fable, we choose Satan over God because God wants you to love your enemy. We believe in vanquishing your enemy. God tells you to forego earthly pleasures. We believe in taking part in earthly pleasures. Make yourself God. That man is a Satanist. I don't care if he conducts a seance. Apparently, he also quit so he could move on to his passion of being a villain from a Christian comic book series. So that makes sense. And by the way, we're going to continue with this. Sorry, I've gone a little bit long because we switched to CNN there. But if you are not a Rumble Premium member, click that right now. It's what keeps the lights on. It's the only reason that we're still here. Mug Club is Rumble Premium. Rumble Premium is Mug Club. So if you join up, $99 in, you get this wonderful hand-etched mug, the Louder with Crowder mug, now co-branded with Rumble. And you can also try it for $9.99 a month. You get a bunch more content. You get it ad-free. It's your best one-stop shop. It's a true free speech platform, and it's growing every day. If you don't, hey, let us earn your membership on another day. Tune back in tomorrow. If you are watching, you get to keep watching. Tim Pool coming up next for free. But let's go on to the next claim made here, that it is RFK Jr. who, for the first time, in an unprecedented approach, made the CDC political.
We need to get politics out of public health. And I think the secretary right now could do a lot to open up, have more transparency.
Because the question that I had during that transition ahead of Inauguration Day was, if this administration tried to politicize the CDC, what would then happen?
If they tried to politicize the CDC. Jeez. Do you mean like COVID lockdowns, being an advocate, ally for LGBTQ AIP and transitioning children, and 6 feet rules and teachers unions and censoring voices of dissent on social media? Do you mean like that kind of politicization of an institution? Here's the truth, of course. RFK Jr. is a response to the blatant politicization. And by the way, weaponization. The CDC was weaponized. Yeah. I can't be more clear about this. The CDC was weaponized against you. You, the American taxpayer. Did you want to go to work? No. Did you want to run your business? No. Were you still making payments on that property while you had renters not making theirs? Hope you enjoy it. Oh, wait, Summer of Love, Black Lives Matter? They're going to burn your shit down. We don't think it's that much of a risk because they're outside. But we're going to close the beaches so you can't surf. Here's another example of politicizing the CDC. Going back to the trusted by and trusting of the LGBTQ community. Let's go to AIDS. AIDS is the single most funded disease, or at least was for the longest time up until the turn of the 21st century. Maybe one has surpassed it now. But more than cancer, more than type 1 diabetes, more than many other diseases that kill far more people. But the primary difference being they are not entirely preventable, unlike AIDS in the United States. It is a statistical non-risk if you are a heterosexual male in this country. Do you understand that? Was the science guiding the funding? Do you remember this? Do you remember the AIDS epidemic? A lot of people don't. They got so mad when I said the AIDS epidemic hoax. I never said AIDS wasn't real. I've been very clear. It's the fact that it was an epidemic that was a hoax. Oprah, this was a famous quote. I think we pulled this from the Chicago Tribune. She said, AIDS has both sexes running scared. Research studies now project that 1 in 5, listen to me, hard to believe, 1 in 5 heterosexuals could be dead from AIDS at the end of the next 3 years. That's by 1990. 1 in 5. It's no longer just a gay disease. Believe me, I don't. Turns out it was a gay disease.
And still is.
And still is.
Intravenously, if you use a dirty needle, maybe you can get it from somebody else. But typically, it's if somebody sticks something in your booty, not in your arm.
Right. So, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's the.
I mean, just to summarize,
it's the blood vessels or capillaries or something.
Put it this way.
In the butt. That, yeah.
Yes. AIDS in the United States, even in the 80s, by the way, not just now, it's the only disease for which you have to set an appointment. Not the same with breast cancer. Didn't get the same funding. Not the same with type 1 diabetes with kids. Sorry, Elton John did a concert. But it's now that it's politicized. By the way, just a public service announcement to help you. Don't have unprotected anal sex with strange men in truck stops. don't use drugs with dirty needles, congratulations, you now have 0% chance of getting AIDS in the United States. None.
Man, that was easy.
Still catch a lot of other things, though, but you don't get the funding.
I had to take a lot of AIDS tests in the military.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think it's like once a year. Someone can correct me in chat, but I think it's like once a year you have to get an AIDS test.
Well,
I'm happy to report I'm AIDS-free.
Good for you. Yeah. Good for you. The good news is there are many methods to deal with AIDS now, too, because there is so much money. Not so much with the kids dying of cancer, but, we'll get to them. We'll get to them. CDC will get to them. Under Barack Obama, also the CDC ordered studies of gun violence. They were commanded to by Barack Obama as a public health crisis, to declare it an epidemic, to politicize and cherry pick data on gun violence.
Mm-hmm. If they made gun violence an epidemic, a health epidemic, would that allow them to have executive power to take guns?
Oh, of course. That's what it all pushes toward. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Emergency powers. By the way, under Biden, the CDC started referring to pregnant women as pregnant people.
Yeah.
Can you, again, what is the basis of science for this? It's trust your institutions. Okay, but the experts told me that men with dicks can shoot babies out of said dicks. Like, is this? It's hard. I'm sorry. Like,
I thought they were butt babies. I'm sorry. What?
It could be that too.
I mean, butt babies. The rule book, I guess.
Butt babies have a 100% chance of getting AIDS, by the way.
Yes. Oh, it's a very, very. It's almost unheard of that they don't.
Yeah, it's very rare.
Pregnant people, but RFK is politicizing it now. So they go. They say you want to erase trans individuals. Well, wouldn't the miracle of motherhood and creation of life, which is exclusive to women, by the way, it's like the only thing that women do better than men that they can only do that men can't do. Wouldn't that be closer to erasing a group of people by erasing the term pregnant women literally and replacing it with pregnant people? Don't politicize the CDC. Remember the teachers' unions, they dictated the policy during COVID to the CDC. Don't you remember that? In summer 2020, the AFT president, Randy Weingarten, threatened to strike if schools opened. Some districts didn't even open up again, quite a few, to full in-person learning until 2022. 2022. 2 years later. And I don't want to ever hear again about how teachers are the real heroes. No, why not? Because the guy with the broken hand is still down at the docks working, and you're too scared to go back into a classroom. Shut up. You're not a hero, you're a coward. And you're not helping our kids, you're fleecing them for your own gain. I don't want to hear this. I just love to teach. I'll do anything. I would drag my body over a mile of broken glass to help the children. Well, how about just going back in now that you're triple vaxxed and it's a statistical non-risk?
Exactly.
What are you, a monster? Well, don't tell me you care about teaching kids. And don't tell me you're underpaid. Seems to me you're overpaid if you're not willing to show back up to work. And again, it's not just what science was available that they said it at the time. Was there science available that maybe we cited where we said, hey, this is going to create a mental health epidemic that you have never seen in young Americans? Substance abuse, depression, increased suicide rates, isolation. And they said, no. Most important, the only thing that matters now is to stop the completely empty hospitals from being overrun. We're still 2 years into this.
Jeez.
And so they destroyed the childhood of your children.
They have other school districts and states across the country that were open at the same time, too. And then you had the guy, the COVID czar, our story out of New York, who was going to underground sex parties and doing all kinds of crazy stuff at that time. While he even talked about the teachers' unions not wanting the schools open in D.C., or I'm sorry, in New York.
Yeah.
Saying that the mayor, they would have probably been on board opening them, but they were like, no, don't open them again.
Yeah.
Firing teachers.
Well, the unions,
left and right.
They exist to protect the students.
Yeah. And when they did open, they made all the teachers get the COVID shot, even though they didn't need it at that time. And people that were about to be retiring lost everything.
Right.
If you remember, we talked about that. That's the kind of priority they place on it. They're not protecting the teachers even, or the kids. They don't care about anything but their power.
Right.
That's really all they care about.
Yep.
And they'll throw everybody else under the bus.
Well,
we politicize this?
Well, it's why don't you trust your institutions? Well, let me. And here's how you know that conservatives actually do love this country, because we have mistrust for almost all of the institutions, and we're still the only ones flying the flag. It's kind of like what you see in England, right? people who have a problem with the rape, who have a problem with the migrant crisis, who have a problem with the economic collapse that they're facing, but then they are the ones who are arrested for flying the flag of their native homeland. That's how you know we actually want to reform this country. We actually want to improve this country, not just bitch about it and destroy it and bleed it dry. So let me give you some examples as to why I don't trust these institutions. CDC is obvious. Well, the IRS. Name me one institution before I do this. One institution that has warranted, earned, or still deserves your trust. Can you think of any? I go back to the IRS, right? Targeting conservatives under Barack Obama. That was pretty clear. Also handing over information to other institutions, which they weren't supposed to do. FBI, well, the Russia collusion hoax, which we now know absolutely was a hoax and was working exclusively on behalf of one political party because they believe they have better job security. The DHS, well, look at your border. Look at the mass migration. Look at 15 to 20 million illegal aliens just in a 3-year span under Joe Biden. How does that happen with any other type of collusion? The NIH, oh, well, remember, there's no gain-of-function research, except it turns out there was gain-of-function research. And it didn't come from a lab, except for the fact that it clearly came from a lab. The DOJ, oh, go back to Barack Obama, Operation Fast and Furious, Gunwalker, that was putting guns in the hands of cartels. You want to talk about HHS? The Obama's Affordable Care Act worked like a charm. You want to talk about the Department of Education? $3 trillion, if you add it up with inflation spent, and test scores are worse off than before. CIA, well, that one's also kind of tough because they had terabytes, thousands of terabytes of pedophile pornography on their computers, and we still don't know the names of the people involved there. Give me an institution here that I should trust. Here's the difference. Only one party is saying trust the institutions or shut up. And if you don't, we're going to lobby private companies and platforms to force you to shut up. And for as flawed as this administration is, and for as many disagreements as I have with RFK Jr., they're asking you to not trust the institutions. They're asking you to verify. That doesn't mean that you'll conduct research robustly and come to the right conclusion. But one side is exclusively saying you need to trust your institutions, shut up, we know what's best. And the other side is saying, yeah, these institutions obviously are not what they're supposed to be, and they need reform. So let me ask that, just looking at those two sort of macro approaches, which one do you think lends itself more to corruption? Which one do you think might find themselves down the trail at a point where they are practicing actively non-science LGBTQ male and female are a figment of your imagination reality, and so we're going to administer puberty blockers and sex changes to children. And then if you don't support it as a parent, we're going to take them away from you. And then we probably have you on a list, so we're probably going to audit you, and you'll probably be deplatformed and debanked as well. People say, it's a big club, you're not in it? Yeah. Look at these institutions. They play by a different set of rules.